Most people try meditation once or twice and then they stop. They sit in silence, the mind keeps moving, and nothing obvious seems to happen. I've spent years studying the relationship between the brain, consciousness, and human behavior, working closely with how internal states shape focus, emotional regulation, and perception in real life. What science shows very clearly is this: meditation is not a vague wellness habit. It creates measurable physical changes in your brain, even when you don't feel them yet. So in this video, I'll show you how meditation actually changes your brain, why those changes really matter, and which 3 types of meditation work best depending on what you want to improve. Here's the first thing I want you to understand. Most people quit meditation because they think meditation is supposed to feel like peace. And when it doesn't, they assume they're doing it wrong. But the mind moving, the monkey mind, at the beginning isn't proof that meditation isn't working. It's proof you finally turned the lights on inside the system that has been running you on autopilot your entire life. So meditation is not you trying to become calm. Meditation is you changing the broadcaster, the stuff that you emit, the signal that you send out. Because your life doesn't respond to what you want for 10 minutes. It responds to the operating signature you embody the other 23 hours and 50 minutes a day. And your operating signature is not a quote. It's your attention, your expectation, your emotional baseline, your reaction, your refractory period. It's your identity. So if you want to understand why meditation works, we have to talk about what it changes in the brain. Let's start with the part of you that's been keeping you in survival mode without you even realizing it. Your amygdala, or actually your amygdalae, because it's 2. The simplest way to understand the amygdala is this. It's your emotional alarm system. It's the smoke detector in your brain, if you wanted to call it like this. And when your amygdala is overactive, life feels like smoke, even when nothing is burning. You start scanning for stuff that might go wrong, you replay conversations over and over again, and you think of neutral moments as threats. You feel urgency in your chest for no reason you can't explain. That's not a personality flaw. It's biology, actually. Chronic stress trains the amygdala to stay online all the time. And when it stays on, it hijacks the rest of your brain. That's why you can know better and still react exactly the same. Because in that moment, your system isn't choosing, it's trying to protect you. It's actually trying to do you a favor, even though that sounds really silly. So now here's what meditation does. Meditation consistently lowers reactivity in this stress center. Over time, people show less emotional hijacking. The stress response slows down. And the most important part is this: you get space. Space between a trigger and your reaction. Space where a new choice can exist. And that space that is so important is the doorway into everything else you want to change. Because calm is not avoidance. Calm is regulation. And when you regulate the system, your nervous system, you're not becoming passive, you're becoming powerful. But reducing stress is only the surface. By the way, if you notice that stress seems to run your reactions more than you'd like, this is exactly the layer we work with more deeply in my YouTube membership. We work on training the nervous system, not forcing calm. So these shifts actually show up in real life and under pressure. You'll find all the details and links below. Now, let's go a little bit deeper, because even if your amygdala calms down, you still need a brain that you can lead. That brings us to the prefrontal cortex. This is your thinking brain, your executive control center, the part of you that can pause, reflect, and choose intentionally. It's responsible for focus, impulse control, and for long-term decision making. And stress weakens exactly this area. That's why stress doesn't just make you anxious. It actually makes you very, very stupid in the moment. You lose patience, you lose perspective, and you lose the ability to hold a higher intention when your environment pulls on you. Now, here's the shift meditation creates. Meditation strengthens prefrontal activities over time, meaning your ability to stay present, to stay deliberate, and to stay in control increases constantly. But you have to do it. Not because you're forcing willpower, but because you're building the circuitry that supports it. This is why people often describe meditation as I'm feeling things, but I'm not being dragged by them. Same emotion, different relationship. Less impulsive reaction patterns, more deliberate decision making, and more capacity to respond instead of react. And yes, this is one of the key mechanisms behind why meditation can support improvement in anxiety and depression patterns for so many people across the planet. Because when the prefrontal cortex is online, you're no longer living as a reflex. You're living as a creator, and that's what we want to be. But even a strong thinking brain doesn't explain constant overthinking. That comes from another system entirely: the default mode network. This one is huge, so listen closely. The default mode network is the brain system that becomes active when your attention is unfocused. When you're not fully engaged in the present moment, this network comes online. and it generates self-referential thought. It creates the mental narrative, the replay loop, the rumination, the what-if spiral, the identity story you keep telling yourself all day, every day. This is the part of the mind that says, this is who I am. This is what happens to me. This is what I can expect. And when it's overactive, you don't just think a lot. You get trapped in thought. You can be sitting in a beautiful moment and still feel like you're not there because your attention is living in a story, not in reality. Now, this is what meditation does. And it's one of the most immediate things people notice. Meditation reduces default mode network activity. Not meaning thoughts disappear, but meaning thoughts lose dominance. They're still there, but they're not driving the car anymore. You develop present moment awareness. You stop feeding the same mental loops with the same emotional fuel. And the result is mental quiet without suppression. That's the difference between meditation and trying not to think. Trying not to think is resistance. Meditation is relationship. You stop being owned by your mind. These changes don't just affect the mind. I'll also show you now how these changes reshape your body's stress response. Because your brain doesn't exist in isolation. Your brain is plugged into your nervous system. Hormones, your immune response, your heart rhythm, everything. When stress is chronic, your body learns a baseline of tension. Even when nothing is happening, the system is preparing for impact. Fear, anxiety, everything. And meditation interrupts that baseline. Over time, many people experience lower stress load and more emotional stability. Not because life becomes easy, but because the body becomes more resilient. One of the clearest signs of this resilience is heart rate variability. Your ability to recover from stress. A resilient nervous system can get activated and just comes back. Dysregulated nervous system gets activated and just stays there. It stays in stress. Meditation also trains vagal tone, your vagus nerve function, because it repeatedly brings you out of the fight or flight and into regulation. And here's the practical part. Your breath is state control. Your breath is one of the fastest ways to reduce noise in your nervous system. It's the quickest way to tell your body you're safe enough to change. Meditation is operating system control. It goes deeper. It exposes the hidden programs you've been running for years, the subconscious protection rules that shape your emotional baseline. And once you see those rules, you can start rewriting them. You can prune them and replace them with new ones. But meditation isn't a one-size-fits-all. There are different techniques that produce very different neurological effects. So let me give you the 3 types I recommend people understand and why. First, focused attention meditation. This is when you pick one anchor, the breath, a mantra, a candle flame, a sound, and you train your attention to return to it. Your mind might wander, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just pull yourself back whenever you notice. This is the gym for focus. It strengthens attention and impulse control because every return is a wrap. So, imagine this. You're in your meditation, you focus on something, and your mind starts to wander. The only thing that you have to do is just put your attention back to the thing that you focus on. And if you're someone who feels scattered, addicted to the phone, or constantly pulled by distraction, this is a powerful start for you. Second, mindfulness or open monitoring. This is when you observe whatever arises. Thoughts, sensations, emotions, without reacting, without judging. You're not trying to fix anything, you're training non-reactivity. This is one of the best approaches for emotional reactivity and overthinking because it teaches you, I feel this without becoming it. Calms the system, not by suppression, but by removing the emotional fuel from the loop. So, number 3, transcendental meditation. This is typically a passive mantra repetition approach designed to allow you and the mind to settle into a deep relaxation response. It can be very effective for people who are highly stressed and need the nervous system to downshift. And it's typically learned through instruction. I personally learned it through the meditations of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I really love them. I do them every day. Now, which one should you choose? Choose based on your desired outcome. If you want focus and discipline, tension. If you want less emotional reactivity and less rumination, choose mindfulness and open monitoring. And if you want deep relaxation, a nervous system reset, or a pathway to the mystical, a mantra-based passive approach is the one that you choose. And you can mix them over time because the goal is not to master a technique for ego points. The goal is to become coherent. Less noise, more signal, a stable operating signature your life can actually mirror. Next comes the part that determines whether this actually becomes part of your life or fades away after just a few days. How to get started. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They start at 20 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 4-hour meditations. They make it a big performance. They try to do everything right and correctly and restart once they drift with their thoughts away. They miss one day and then they decide they failed. That's not how the brain changes. The brain changes through repetition. So start with 1 or 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Pick a single anchor. Breath, I recommend, is the easiest. You can do it everywhere. You could do it in a train, you can do it at home, you could do it in the evening, you could do it in a couch, you can do it at your lunch break. Expect the mind to wander. And I want you to hear this clearly. Expect it. It's gonna happen. And it is completely okay. The mind wandering isn't the problem. The mind wandering is actually your training environment. Because returning your attention is the practice. When your mind wanders, just pull yourself back without judging, without fear, without anything. Just come back to your breath. The return is literally the moment you stop being controlled by your default programming. And if you need support, use guided meditations at the beginning. Again, I highly recommend Dr. Joe Dispenza. Guidance can build the habit before you go really deep. Then focus on consistency over duration. Do it daily, even if it's short, but do it every single day because repetition rewires your identity. And here's the deeper layer that most people miss. When you sit down to meditate, you're not just training your mind, you're negotiating with your subconscious and its protection rules. Your nervous system has learned its entire life that the unknown is dangerous, so it will resist stillness because it's unknown to you. It will create thoughts, restlessness, and important problems to solve. Sometimes discomfort, a little bit pain, itching, not because it hates you, because it's loyal to the familiar. It actually tries to protect you. So don't fight it, don't judge it, regulate it. Try to observe it without reacting to it. Every time you return to the breath, you're telling the body, we are safe enough to become someone else, and this is what we want. This is where timeline shifting becomes real, not as a fantasy, but as a lawful consequence. Because when your reactions change, your choices change. When your choices change, your identity changes. And when your identity changes, the entire universe has to reorganize around you. Your outcomes will change, and reality will mirror that stability. So, inside coherence constraints, continuity, nervous system integrations, identity logic, your freedom is enormous. You don't return to proof, you return to offer. And nothing is random. What comes up in meditation is curriculum. It's a mirror, an intention into evolution. So meditation isn't about escaping life. It's retraining your nervous system that experiences life. It reshapes your brain, recalibrates your stress response, and gives you back the ability to respond instead of reacting. And there's one more layer where this becomes especially important, because even with all this awareness, many people notice that letting go is still the hardest part. And that's exactly what the next video is all about. I break down how to release inner resistance, why happiness doesn't come from forcing change, and how to feel grounded and complete without needing anything to shift on the outside first. If you want to take this work one step deeper, watch that video next.